All mixed up feelings are flying around Sun Hill in a love triangle. The bill's at 8 tonight. Now though at 6:30, the national and international evening news.
Holly and Jessica case, new move to prevent trouble at court.
Doctor accused of offering kidney from live donor.
British clubs prepare for a crucial night in Europe.
And new hope for Abby after successful heart transplant.
The ITV Evening News with John Suchet and Katie Derrick.
Good evening, welcome to the programme.
Hello. Maxine Carr, the woman charged with perverting the course of justice in the Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman case, will be allowed to appear via video link from prison at her court hearing tomorrow. The unusual step has been taken to avoid the angry protests that accompanied her previous court appearance.
Earlier, details of the service to remember Holly and Jessica were released. Soham's vicar said the service, to be held at Ely Cathedral on Friday morning, would be a celebration, not a memorial. Nearly 2,000 people have been invited, but the public have been asked to stay away. Here's Geraint Vincent.
It seems like this that the judge presiding over Maxine Carr's case wants to avoid. The police convoy which brought the defendant before magistrates in Peterborough last week confronted with an angry crowd as it made its way in and out of court. The 25-year-old classroom assistant is charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice by giving false information to police during their inquiry into the murder of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. Tomorrow, again in Peterborough, Ms Carr will appear for the first time before a Crown Court, but she won't be there in person. She'll do it via live video link from Holloway Prison, where she's being held on remand. The link system is most commonly used in cases where vulnerable people, such as children who may be frightened or intimidated by being in the courtroom, have to give evidence. But after discussions with both the prosecution and the defence in Ms Carr's case, the judge has ruled that the defendant can appear for tomorrow's hearing using the same method.
It's very unusual at this stage to be using a television link. She's not actually, as a defendant, giving evidence at this stage. She is merely appearing. She is, as it were, present in court through a television screen. She won't be giving evidence as such. Normally one would expect the matter to be remanded in the absence of the defendant, but so much has been happening. Perhaps it was felt that it would only be a week's remand and that she obviously therefore has to be present.
Away from the criminal investigation, preparations are being made at Ely Cathedral for this Friday's memorial service for Holly and Jessica. Around 2,000 people are expected to attend, mainly from the girls' hometown of Soham, by invitation only.
It's a service of celebration and remembrance for Holly and Jessica, and that's the wording which the parents of the girls have requested, and indeed the whole service is being organised at their request and according to their wishes.
As people continue to sign their condolences, the police have announced that they are finally able to release the girls' bodies for their funerals, which the families have made clear are to be strictly private affairs. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Cambridgeshire.
So Geraint, what really is behind today's decision to allow Maxine Carr to give evidence via video link?
Well, it is an unusual move, but the judge clearly believes that the interests of justice are best served by making it. He made the decision after discussions with the prosecution and the defence, both of whom raised their concerns about the effect of the kind of angry crowd scenes that we saw here last week during Ms Carr's first appearance before magistrates in Peterborough. The judge listened to their concerns, but the decision was his, and after he made his statement today, he said he had a duty to ensure every defendant has a fair trial and fair and proper procedural hearings before trial, and it's because of that duty that he's allowed Ms Carr to appear via video link.
So what is expected to happen at tomorrow's hearing?
Well, it's a routine hearing in as much as anything's routine in this particular case. It's understood that Ms Carr won't be entering a plea, but the purpose of tomorrow's hearing is really to set out a timetable for the presentation of the prosecution case against Ms Carr.
Geraint Vincent, thank you very much indeed.
A GP accused of being involved in the sale of human organs from live donors appeared before a disciplinary hearing at the General Medical Council today. Dr. Bhagat Makar, who's facing charges of serious professional misconduct, is accused of offering to find donors who wanted to sell their organs for cash and arrange for their operations. Lawrence McGinty reports.
Dr. Bhagat Makar arrived at the General Medical Council this morning facing some of the most serious charges possible against a doctor. It's alleged before he retired he traded in human organs for transplant from live donors. The 7 members of the disciplinary tribunal heard he'd offered to arrange a kidney transplant from a paid donor in India. All this arises because of a chronic shortage of kidneys for transplantation. Some 6,000 patients are on the waiting list, but only 2,000 or so operations are carried out every year. That created a market for affluent Westerners to go to India and pay poor people to donate a kidney. It's a dangerous practice banned in Britain and India. Today's allegations follow a visit last year to the surgery where Dr. Makar then practiced by Sunday Times reporters. They secretly recorded their conversations. They asked whether Dr. Makar's fee covered the donor costs as well. He replied, all donor, everything will be sorted out. And that, they asked, will cover the cost of the donor, everything. He said, everything. Later they asked about an operation in England. Here, the fee for the donor, would it be more or the same as in India? Oh, it will be a lot more, Dr. Makar replied. At the General Medical Council today, Dr. Makar's defence questioned the accuracy of these transcripts. Dr. Makar's lawyers will argue the secretly recorded conversations between him and 2 undercover journalists should be ruled as inadmissible evidence. They say it was part of an entrapment operation by a newspaper out for a colourful story. But if that evidence stands, it seems Dr. Makar will have a strong case to answer. Lawrence McGinty, ITV News, at the General Medical Council.
Tony Blair returned from holiday today to face growing concern here and abroad about possible military action against Iraq. Downing Street said Mr. Blair was in total agreement with America on the need to deal with the threat posed by Saddam Hussein, but Britain still believed the problem could be resolved if weapons inspectors were allowed into Iraq. That's quite different to what the Americans have been saying. Kevin Dunn reports.
The Prime Minister returned to 10 Downing Street, red dispatch box in hand, and the subject of Iraq top of the domestic and international agenda. Mr. Blair's spokesman said he and President Bush were in total agreement on the need to deal with Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. Though the Foreign Secretary, who was among the first to brief Mr. Blair, has said that Saddam can yet resolve the crisis by letting UN weapons inspectors back into Iraq. The noises from the United States, however, are considerably more bellicose, with Defence Secretary Donald Rumsfeld saying the United States was prepared, if necessary, to go it alone.
It's less important to have unanimity than it is to be making the right decisions and doing the right thing.
And he drew parallels with Winston Churchill's pre-war warnings of the dangers posed by Hitler.
It wasn't until each country was attacked that they stopped and said, well, maybe Winston Churchill was right. Maybe that lone voice expressing concern about what was taking place was the right voice.
But Saddam Hussein, today shown meeting his closest advisors in Baghdad, has had expressions of support from Egypt, Syria and Saudi Arabia, and even from its old enemy Iran, whose President Mohammad Khatami, at a rare press conference, denounced American policy as potentially worse than terrorism. Baghdad, meanwhile, is stepping up its propaganda counter-offensive. Iraqi officials escorted journalists to a factory alleged to have produced chemical and biological weapons. It has twice been bombed by American warplanes and twice rebuilt, but Iraqi officials insisted the rusty drums on display contained nothing more harmful than pesticides. Kevin Dunn, ITV News.
And our correspondent John Ray is in Downing Street and Robert Moore is in Washington. We go to Downing Street first. John, the British government clearly still sees weapons inspections as the way forward.
Yes, and that would appear to put Britain at odds somewhat with the US. But, you know, in politics, the appearance of division isn't always damaging. And for my money, this is one of those occasions where, frankly, it helps Tony Blair to be seen to be a little bit distant from some of those more hawkish voices in Washington. He's come back from holiday today. He's got polling evidence on his desk showing what support there is for a war is slipping away. There is a very vocal band of Labour MPs who are opposed to what's going on. That makes for the prospect of a very uncomfortable ride for the Prime Minister, first of all at the TUC conference and then at the Labour conference. The question you have to ask yourself, how realistic is this escape option of UN weapon inspectors? Not many people here in Westminster say with confidence that they would expect Saddam Hussein to actually allow those inspectors back in anytime, any place, anywhere.
All right, thank you, John. We go to Robert Moore in Washington. Robert, you heard the perspective there from London. How's it viewed in Washington? Is there a clear difference between London and Washington?
Yeah, John, I think there is a difference. Viewed by the Bush White House, weapons inspections and such a regime of weapons inspections has been tried and failed. Pentagon officials point out that in the aftermath of the Gulf War, Iraq was subject to some of the most intrusive inspections in the history of arms control, and yet in the view of US intelligence, Iraq managed to hide some key components in its program of weapons of mass destruction. So very little faith here in weapons inspections. They see it as something of a diversionary tactic by Saddam Hussein to gain some extra time.
Yes, we saw Donald Rumsfeld talking on our report. American politicians seem to be going out of their way to sell this military action to the American people.
Yeah, there is now, I think, a concerted attempt by, if you like, the heavy hitters on the right of the Bush administration to make the case for preemptive military action. We've had speeches from Dick Cheney, from Donald Rumsfeld, even from Condoleezza Rice. But of course, from their boss, from President Bush, he's still saying that he's made absolutely no decision on a military attack.
Robert Moore in Washington, John Ray in London. Thank you.
Well, within the last half an hour, police have said they've taken the convicted murderer, Richard Crawford, back into custody. Crawford disappeared after being granted bail pending an appeal in July. But today he made contact with police and agreed to meet them at an address in Brighton. Now arrangements are being made to transfer him back to Scotland.
The Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, has arrived in Johannesburg for the Earth Summit, where he says failure is not an option. After causing controversy at previous summits, Mr. Prescott appeared to be trying to keep a low profile. Delegates in Johannesburg are still trying to reach agreement over agricultural subsidies. Tim Hewitt reports.
John Prescott arrived with high security but a low profile. No cameras were allowed to record the moment. These pictures were taken from long range. The Deputy Prime Minister apparently hoping to tread the red carpet unobserved. Mr. Prescott staying in the heavily guarded luxury hotel that newspapers have said offers the British delegation a lavish lifestyle. Later he did emerge after a first round of meetings. Mr. Prescott's attracted controversy at gatherings like this in the past, and his role here will be as a behind-the-scenes advisor to Tony Blair, who will address the summit next week.
Failure is unacceptable, can only mean that hundreds of millions of more people will be threatened with failure to get food, failure to get clean water. That is unacceptable in this world today, as rich as it is.
But there is still the prospect of failure here, at least in some key areas. Talks over the contentious issue of farm subsidies to wealthy nations are reportedly deadlocked.
There has been some progress towards the all-important final declaration here, but it's been slow progress, and environmentalists are still worried that there'll be a lack of teeth to enforce the measures that are agreed.
Water was the theme today. Traditional dancers were on hand as former President Nelson Mandela opened a symbolic water dome and talked of the impoverishment of people in rural areas.
And in that impoverishment of the natural environment, it is the absence of access to clean water that strikes most starkly.
Meanwhile, security remains intense. There were more small demonstrations today, but police are bracing for a weekend protest march that may attract more than 20,000 people. Tim Hewitt, ITV News, Johannesburg.
The latest from the Earth Summit.
There's more still to come on the ITV Evening News, including the Spanish holiday hotel at the centre of a legal battle.
Cold Feet star banned after admitting drink driving.
And one little girl who can't wait to get back to school.
Those stories and more when we come back.
Welcome back to the ITV ITV Evening News.
The main stories: Maxine Carr will appear via video link at her court hearing tomorrow in an effort to avoid angry protests.
And a GP accused of being involved in the sale of human organs has appeared before the General Medical Council.
Now, hundreds of holidaymakers are joining forces to sue several tour operators over their Spanish holiday. They claim they all fell ill during their stay at the Torremolinos Beach Club Hotel, and that the travel companies were aware that people were becoming ill there and didn't do enough to warn their customers. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Choi.
Not on their backs by the pool, but flat on their backs with food poisoning. That's the claim of so many British holidaymakers at the Torremolinos Beach Club Hotel that a record 610 want to sue. A further 890 have spoken to lawyers, who today said this is set to be the biggest legal action of its kind.
I think this is an example of families not being prepared to put up with the lame excuses of tour operators and being prepared to take legal action to protect their families. And I see that as a good thing, not a bad thing.
The bulk of complaints from the hotel started last year. In November, holidaymakers first reported being ill. Tour operators continued to send customers. In April, the hotel was closed for a fortnight for decorating, cleaning and checks, but that didn't stop the complaints. There were more again in June. Hazel and George Worrell from Telford didn't end up with the happy holiday snaps they'd expected.
It was Christmas Eve. I had my evening meal. I felt very, very sick. I was sick all night, and then my husband had to take me to the doctor on Christmas morning.
The tour company Thomson says hygiene monitoring shows high standards at the Torremolinos Beach Club. Cosmos says the hotel offers almost unlimited access to food and drink, which can lead to upset stomachs if people eat more than they're used to. Both Cosmos and JMC say independent inspections here gave no evidence to sustain the legal claims. As thousands return from all sorts of holidays, today's news of such a large-scale complaint raises some important issues. The travel trade does have its own grievance procedure and even codes of conduct. But campaigners say that Britain now needs a holiday ombudsman, so people don't have to keep going to court. Meanwhile, whoever is right in this case, tonight it seems that Torremolinos Beach Club may end up as famous for its appearance in the courts as it is for appearing in our holiday brochures. Chris Choi, ITV News.
Here, the actor John Thompson, one of the stars of ITV1's Cold Feet, was banned from driving for 3 years today after pleading guilty to being 2.5 times over the drink-drive limit. He was stopped by police in Manchester last August. When asked to take a breath test, he said it's a fair cop. Here's Angus Walker.
John Thompson, along with his girlfriend, had to run a gauntlet of photographers and reporters when he arrived at Trafford Magistrates Court to be sentenced after pleading guilty to drink driving. The Cold Feet star faced a similar offence in 1996 and also has 2 endorsements for speeding. Thompson was stopped by police on this South Manchester road driving his top-of-the-range Jaguar late on a Saturday night in early August last year. A breathalyser showed he was 2.5 times over the limit. The actor told the arresting officers it's a fair cop. In court, Thompson's solicitor appealed for leniency, saying as a well-known figure working to a busy schedule, he was a man under pressure. She also told magistrates that Thompson and his girlfriend are due to have their first baby in November and that the couple wanted to give their child the best possible start.
We got something to say?
Thompson first came to fame in the BBC comedy programme The Fast Show before starring in the critically acclaimed ITV series Cold Feet. The actor has offered to take an alcohol education course, but his sentence of a 3-year driving ban, a 12-month community order and £60 costs has angered some road safety campaigners.
There certainly should have been a prison sentence today. We have to remember that this is a man that is looked up to, probably looked up to by the younger generation as well. New drivers are particularly vulnerable. Drink driving is a horrendous crime that kills hundreds of people every year. You shouldn't do it, particularly if you're a celebrity.
Despite John Thompson's success on screen, his solicitor said he just wanted to be treated like anyone else by the court. However, after the hearing, he was smuggled out via the cells into a waiting car. Angus Walker, ITV News, Sale, Greater Manchester.
Football, and Manchester United's convincing win in their Champions League qualifier last night didn't come without a cost. They thrashed their Hungarian opposition, but they finished the game with injury worries over midfielders Roy Keane and Paul Scholes. Tonight, Celtic and Newcastle hope to book their place in Europe's biggest competition. Here's Felicity Barr.
When Bobby Robson took charge at Newcastle 3 years ago, his only aim was to keep the struggling club in the Premiership. Since then, he's been knighted, celebrated his 69th birthday and orchestrated a change in United's fortunes. So Bobby's credited with inspiring a new sense of optimism and enthusiasm at the club. And now they're on the brink of qualifying for Europe's top football competition. A convincing victory over Bosnian side Zaleznikar tonight would see United through to the first phase of the Champions League.
We're a better side than they are, but our attitude and our work has to be absolutely spot on. And if it's not, we just might get a teasing result, and we're not looking for that. And the players had better be focused about it.
And for the players, the Champions League is the ultimate goal.
It's a great experience travelling around Europe, playing in different countries, playing against different systems, playing against great players. And it's what you want to achieve as a player. It's what you want to play at the highest level, and it doesn't come much higher than the Champions League.
Around 1,000 Celtic fans have made the journey to Switzerland for their team's qualifying match against FC Basel. Confidence is high, with Celtic leading 3-1 from the first leg in Glasgow a fortnight ago. Manager Martin O'Neill's promising another attacking performance.
We will give everything we have to get through. We will try and score a goal, just like Christian's team did it at our ground. We will have to go and try and score, and we will. Well, it'll be a difficult game, but we're capable of doing it.
Both Celtic and Newcastle hope to emulate the success of Manchester United last night, but their victory came at a price. Paul Scholes will be out for at least 2 weeks with an ankle injury. However, United today denied that captain Roy Keane's about to undergo knee surgery, confirming he will be in the squad for Saturday's game at Sunderland. Felicity Barr, ITV News.
A reminder of tonight's main headlines. Maxine Carr, charged with perverting the course of justice in the Soham murder case, will be allowed to appear via video link from prison at her court hearing tomorrow after these angry protests at her last appearance.
And a GP accused of being involved in the sale of human organs from live donors has appeared before a disciplinary hearing at the General Medical Council.
Tony Blair returned to Downing Street today after his holiday amid growing concern over plans to take military action against Iraq.
And finally, thousands of children across the country will be dreading the end of their summer holidays and the start of school, but not so Abby Cape.
4 months ago, the 9-year-old was suffering from a rare heart condition and was given just weeks to live. But after a heart transplant, she's fit and can't wait for school. Here's Paul Davis.
During the darkest days when Abby Cape was on a life support machine, an outing like this must have seemed a million miles away. Today, on the eve of her return to school, the 9-year-old from Leicestershire, accompanied by her brother Kane, achieved her wish to travel on the London Eye. She's waving to her mum, who stayed on the ground because she doesn't like heights. Abby has no such fears. The little girl, who before her heart operation was given days to live, is too busy catching up with life.
Seeing all my friends, going back to school, just going out and things.
Days like today?
Yeah.
Have you been looking forward to this?
Yeah.
Abby received messages of support and good luck from all around the world at the time of her transplant. She suffered from a rare virus which damaged the muscle of her own heart. Her condition was so serious, she was placed at the top of the European transplant waiting list. Since the operation, her recovery has been remarkable. Her family are overjoyed.
The best part of life now is being back at home and being able to continue the life that we had before Abby got sick. And also being out and about and being able to be in each other's company and just being a foursome, because you know it could have been so different.
Tomorrow it's back to earth when Abby returns to school for the first time in 6 months. And while most 9-year-olds might have mixed feelings about that prospect, for Abby it's another milestone on the journey back to a normal life. Paul Davis, ITV News, Central London.
And that's the news. The ITV Evening News is back at 6:30 tomorrow.
And I'll be back tonight with the ITV News at 10. Until then, though, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
PowerGen, controlling energy for homes and business.
Hello, good evening. Layer upon layer of decent weather across Britain tomorrow. Only the cloudy slice in the middle bit promises the odd spot of rain, but even there, generally dry weather. That cloudy layer at the moment is in the north and west. It's been across Scotland and Northern Ireland today. It's moving down now into northern England and Wales overnight. There are still some outbreaks of rain coming from it, but it's only light and patchy. Further south, a dry night and just a few mist patches around. That's how we start off the day tomorrow, then, with that cloudy layer across central parts of Britain. It is drifting further south through the day, the odd spots of rain fizzling out, the southeast probably staying dry, and to the north and west of it some sunny spells, one or two blustery showers in the far north where temperatures will struggle to 16, a warmer 23 in the southeast.
PowerGen, controlling energy for homes and business.